Okie dokie. Welcome back to Black Clover Anime Review, episode 110. This is our reviewing the 160th episode of the anime, which is called The Messenger from the Spade Kingdom, which, believe it or not, is also the name of one of the chapters they adapted for this episode, which they adapted from chapters 234, 235. I kind of suspect that. Now, here's the interesting thing about this episode. They actually have a flashback sequence, which is from the manga, but in the anime, they fleshed it out. And in the manga, it's like brief images here. It's like brief images, like flat, like bam, 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 like pinpoint stuff here and there. In the anime, they fleshed it out to a good 5-minute sequence. The episode starts out where we last left in the last episode, where Yuna finds out he's actual prince. And basically, then of course he get a chance to get introduced to Yuno's wind spirit, Seth, aka Belle, who's been with him ever since she first showed up in the series, back in the dungeon exploration arc, believe it or not. Yeah, it's been that freaking long. I think that was like the second arc of the series when she first showed up, and she's been there for since then. So basically, the guy's name was Ralph. He introduced himself as Ralph. And the fact that he and his family have been serving the royal family for generations. And then he uses his fire mask to give Yuna a flashback to the events of the Spade Kingdom prior to the Dark Triad taking over. We show basically the king of the Spade Kingdom, which, oddly enough, he looks like the leader of the Dark Triad. Somewhat, anyways. He's got a very similar face. But according to Ralph, that Yuna is a spitting image of his father, which, okay, I can kind of buy that. Maybe the Dark Triad just basically distant relatives of the Spade Kingdom royal family. It's possible to say at least, but who knows. We basically have the king of the Spade Kingdom just wiggling his baby something, and then we hear a baby crying. What was he waiting for? Like his wife to give birth. Yep. Which this from what I can tell is a common a good old basically from what I can tell, this is a common practice, for the king, way outside the birthing room, or the room basically where the wife gives birth. Yeah, this is from what I can tell for a common practice. The one time I've actually seen this happen in fiction, aside from this, was actually in the Napoleon miniseries, believe it or not, where Napoleon was waiting for the birth of his son, but basically it was kind of a weird moment anyways, but that's the only time I can think of. But this is an old tradition, basically, royal families probably went through, where the father cannot be in the room where it basically sees birth. This probably was a common case, basically, for Dark Ages type stuff. Even up until 19th century, this was like this. I would say in recent times, basically, this has actually been thrown out thanks to modern medicine. Because fathers are generally there for the birth, not waiting in their room a lot of the time. Doesn't happen very often much anymore, from what I can tell. So, he introduces his son. Of course, they mentioned that it was actually the wife's idea to name him Yuno. Yes. Oddly enough, and I'm not really sure why this is. Now, this is never explained in the anime. Even the manga, this explains. Now, okay, Yuno is the spitting image of his father. But does anyone point out, though, that his mother is that Sister Lily looks almost exactly like his mother? Yeah, it looks almost exactly like his mother, except his mother's like an older version of Sister Lily. They've never pointed this out, though. It's just that she looks very similar. That could probably be due to the fact that... Oh, wait. It's not... No, wait. I don't think it's actually... Oh, no. She looks similar to Fenice. Yes, Fenice. Fenrir's fiance. Very similar appearance. Same dark black hair. Similar looking face. Excuse me. And basically, after the birth, they have her a guy running to the street. It's like, yeah, Prince is born. Yeah, we have a baby. And we basically celebrate this, basically, the start of a new life. This is kind of, even basically, kind of said, we have people running the streets like, oh yeah, baby's born. Yeah, more babies are born nowadays than they were back then. So, Right at this, we have serious celebrations. We have basically Ralph's father babysitting the young prince, which basically this whole sequence is completely fleshed out. They even added a little sequence of Ralph basically practicing his fire magic. Yep, practicing his fire magic. And then we have the Dark Triad when they come back. This particular scene is complete anime original. This basically was probably mentioned to happen in manga, but mostly probably happened off screen. You have this little sequence which is rough, like barely a minute, where the Dark Triad basically, they weren't known as Dark Triad just yet. They were known as the Zetro siblings, two brothers and a sister, where they just came back from killing a bunch of rebels. And the queen questioning, did you order them to kill rebels? And she's like, no, I didn't. I did not order this at all. And she's a bit upset about that, but she's not going to hate him for it all because basically he has no control over those three actions. And then, for the next day, treason! Because the Dark Triad turned on the kingdom. Yep, they turned on. They basically killed a bunch of troops. They apparently have some followers. And Ralph basically loves his father to get away with young Prince Uno. And they run away to the Clover Kingdom, which apparently this is how, somehow, someway, the Spade soldiers catch up with him. Which I kind of think the reason why the Clover Kingdom probably didn't detect Spade Kingdom soldiers in their kingdom, because at the time, I'm sure that the Clover Kingdom Magic Knights were too arrogant to come out to the boonies. Well, basically, from this small village. Yeah, a lot of the magical knights are very arrogant and pig-headed a lot of the time. There's a couple squads, basically, or there's a few squads actually not like that. The Black Bulls don't mind going anywhere. They have no problem basically going to this village like this at all. It's not mostly the from what I can tell, the captains are not written to be unreasonable people. It's their subordinates, basically, are written to be complete unreasonable people. Case in point, the vice captain of the Purple Orcas, where the thing is, he was stopped by a woman, basically, who asked him personally to help look for normally magical knights was to help people. But some people particularly believe the fact that magical knights exist to protect nobility, which, according to the Wizard King, that's actually not true. They're not meant to protect just nobility. They protect the entire fucking country, along with the people. It's just basically that a lot of magical knights tend to be rich people. Filthy rich. Though there have been a couple, there's roughly two people who actually are not from wealthy families. And that's Yami and Jack the Ripper. They're the only two who are not. All the rest are. Even Charlotte, the woman who's in love with Yami. Yep. So, right after they get back, of course, they have basically Ralph's father where he gets away from the space soldiers. And apparently he collapsed the cliff where and by the way, just by sheer coincidence, he happens to go to the same area with Yuna when he's escaping from the Clover Kingdom. The same area where 15 years later, his son just happens to go in the same area. I don't know if this was a reused shot from early on from a few episodes back, but this is kind of like a reused shot, except that because it looked like the same exact cliffside, and it's a very similar sequence, basically, of a guy with red hair being chased by his own country soldiers, and he jumps into the strong magic region. The only difference is the fact that when he did it, it was heavy snowstorm. There was no snow there, from what I can tell, if I remember from the actual original episode itself, where they used the sequence. Except this time, the only change they make to it was the fact that it's actually a different person and carrying an object, basically a baby, and the fact that it's a snowstorm. But it's a very similar sequence. He jumps in, he's able to basically come across Hodge Village just by sheer coincidence. Like, oh, it's a church! And he just uses his last of his wind magic. Yes, this guy can use wind magic. Unlike his son, uses fire magic. So he whisked Yuno away off to the church, and then he kills himself along with two of the Spade Kingdom soldiers in order to avoid Yuno's location. Of course, he has basically let's just say a bogus thing, Also, Dark Triad took time when they were overthrowing the kingdom. They killed the king and queen. Yep. Even after basically Yuna got the explanation of this, basically he comes back to President like, oh, what's this? And basically said, yeah, everything I showed you, that all happened. Of course, Bell doesn't believe it. And then he gets a phone call. Basically, his magic communicator. Hey, can you come, like, and basically he gets a phone call like, hey, trouble, come back to the headquarters right away, we're under attack. He's like, what? So he flies away. This is actually a bit of a change from the manga. Because the thing is, this is not where the chapter 234 ended. It actually ended where one of the commercial breaks ended with basically showing the Dark Triad when I think it's Zeon when he first showed up at the Golden Headquarters. They actually changed it to where they actually show Yuno flying away. And then they actually moved the sequence a bit after that. Also, they also changed the location where he said the line, I am Yuno of the Spade Kingdom, of the Clover Kingdom, because in the manga he says to Ralph. In the anime he said when he was in the air, he said the bell. And then of course, like, the attack on the Golden Headquarters is spot on to how it was presented in the manga. Though they did make one small little change here. Like, everybody is attacked normally how they were in the manga. Though I should start off, though, the anime does not start off with basically Yuno. It starts off with basically 234. Start off with a few people from the Golden Dawn gossiping about Yuno and the fact he's got fan clubs, which they actually did a Petty Club, which I'll discuss that in a minute. Though they apparently changed in one of the characters because when Zeon basically he's here looking for the Arcane Soldier or the Arcane Sage Magical Knight, who is ruling Vengeance, by the way. Yeah, they confirmed this pre-time skip that basically Vengeance and Yami are the only arcane level sages basically that the Clover Kingdom has. Despite the fact you have all these Magic Knight captains, only Yami and Vengeance basically are the only ones who are at that level. Which, okay, I guess some people are not surprised with basically Vengeance because he left the family. But Yami, really? I bet everybody was surprised. Probably the two people who were most surprised about this were probably Nozel and Jack the Ripper. Charlotte, I think she suspected that he might have been a very powerful wizard. But as in the case of Jack the Ripper and Nozel, they never suspected at all. I would say the only captain who probably suspect this, aside from Charlotte, is probably for Golian. He probably suspects this because he probably has seen him basically in combat. So he suspected basically that Yuno's very powerful. As for the captain of the Purple Orcas, I don't know. I don't think he ever really... It doesn't seem... Because unlike the other Magic Knight captains where he's known for quite some time, I don't think he knew much about the current captain of the Purple Orcas. But what about... You probably think, okay, what about the previous captain? I think he suspected he's probably pretty powerful. Arcane Sage, I don't know, but I think he suspected he was pretty powerful. The current one, I don't know about that. Rel can't get a read on basically if he suspected that Yami was powerful. I'm sure he probably think he was probably pretty powerful. But yeah, that's basically when it comes to that. And they kind of changed the name of the guy who's basically Yuno's one-sided rival. Because in the manga refer to him as Spencer, in the anime refers as Achilles. I'm not really sure why they changed his name for, despite the fact it's essentially the same character. Also, the way the sub basically has him call basically Vanchi. He doesn't call him Captain, which basically doesn't do either anime or manga. In the manga refers to as Master. In the anime refers to him as Lord Vengeance, where it takes Vengeance from Zeon's basically bone power. And basically, Vanch uses World Tree magic to heal him. And then, of course, the episode ends basically the same way Chapter 235 ends. You arrive at the Golden Headquarters and yelling at the Dark Disciple soldiers. By the way, their introduction is like spot. Like a lot of their dialogue is basically spot from the manga. And he basically says, "What have you done to my comrades?" Yeah, what an awesome way to end the episode. The Penny Club moment is so hilarious, and it has a fourth wall breaking joke. Like, mention the whole thing about fan clubs. And they mentioned the woman, oh yeah, I'm basically in charge of one of the fan clubs here at the Golden Dawn. And the guy's like, what? We have a fan club here at the Golden Dawn? And they mentioned, oh yeah, he's on social media too. I'm like, what? Since when did the Clover Kingdom got smartphones? But looking up at the Penny Clover moments are essentially, some of them are mostly non-canon. I'd say this one is definitely not canon at all. I was the only one I can think is probably canon is the action between Mars and Fiora. That's what I can think of anyways. Yeah, but this one was hilarious, to say the least. They mentioned all the merchandise has. Like, since when does he have I get the fact he's popular, but since when does he have merchandise? That is something to say the least. Alright, moving on to the news tab of the manga, which is Undying Bodies. The cover image is the Dark Triad naked in mud. I am not kidding about that. That is seriously what the cover image is. Okay, I get the fact you want to show off Vanika, but at least the fact that the mud covers up her nipples. I appreciate that because you probably don't need to show her nipples. Despite the fact you can clearly see she is completely naked. The other two, well, they're not showing anything below the belt, which is fine. But it's a good image by Yukati Tabita, you pronounce it. Yeah, but Veronica, she's smoking hot. So, for a guy basically like myself, like, yeah, give me more of this. Okay. Chapter starts off basically with Jack the Ripper taking on... I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is. He's the leader of Dark Triad. Where Jack will slice him and he says, nothing except anti-magic can chance her and me. He's like, and basically Jack doesn't even care. And he proceeds to keep presence of Demon King. Except for, of course, the Vice Captain of Black Bulls. It is Devil Union Mode Equilis, characteristic toughness. Where it looks like he puts on some body armor thanks to his devil. He does his usual thing like, oh yeah, Captain Prayman says you're height. Yep, and then of course the guy punches him, doesn't do anything. And he kicks the guy. Show more of that malice. And then we see, looks like we get a flashback to Jack Thurber's childhood. Where apparently his father was a hunter and he developed a thing for praying mantises, and then he, apparently uses power to slice up a giant bear. Yes, a bear that looks like to be bigger than a normal bear. I would say this bear is... Now, normally bears are normally about 7 feet tall. This looks like 10 to 12 feet tall bear. Really big. And, of course, well, then he basically decides to poke the bear when it comes to mentioning Yami. And that makes Jack the Ripper so mad because he and Jack, Yami and Jack don't like each other at all. So they continue to slice him, how much attack? And he's like, yo, don't mess with insects. And then he gets cut. It's like, it appears I underestimated you. Interesting. Bit of a step down from the last chapter. And everybody thinking, how is this a step down from the last chapter? Well, Jack the Ripper, from my perspective, when it comes to characters in the series, he's never been the character that I found to be interesting. Heck, even his squad is barely noticeable in the series. Probably because of the fact that his squad is, aside from him and the guy who says Fuha, aside from those two, the praying mantises have never really appeared in the series much at all. Because I don't think that you've ever developed an interest in the praying mantises at all. It's kind of the same thing with the purple orcas, where you don't get much development on them. I'd say the only squads you get development, aside from the Black Bulls and the Golden Dawn, I would probably say it's the Crimson Lion Kings, the Blue Rose Knights. You get a good amount developed for them. Okay, well, Aqua Deer. Well, aside from its captain and the one woman from it, you don't get much development on the group at all. Just basically mostly 4 squads. Yep, but the Praying Mantises, in my opinion, are probably the most least interesting squad. I mean, what exactly do they do? Really? I mean, they recruit a guy basically who's annoying. So what? He's annoying. Can we just move on to something else when it comes to this character? Yep. But next week we're going to continue this this trend of basically like really good episodes. I'm hoping we get that next week. Now, unlike One Piece, which is going to take a break this week, not the case of Black Clover. Nope, we're going to get a new chapter next week. Yep. But this was a really good chapter. I'm going to give this one roughly a 9 out of 10. And thank God we're not going to wait 2 weeks next chapter. Yeah, thank God for that, because we don't need to have another 2-week break. We don't need to have a week off again. We just came back. We don't need to have another one. I'm glad Black Clover's not doing it, neither is My Hero Academia. Now, as of right now, when it comes to the manga is basically about 43 chapters ahead of the actual anime. Though I think it will continue to be like that for quite a while. Actually, it might be lowered down by a little bit by next week because, well, next week is basically release of chapter 279. And probably also, they probably go to about chapter 237, possibly. Who knows? Okay, so that's it for particular view. Next view is a comic corner. Yep. And that'll probably be it for today. Alright, to the next video. Bye.